Okay, so here we are, Kingdom of Heaven, starting the second turn off, and yes, I'm taking my time on this. I figure I'm not going to go into any detail terribly on any of the other scenarios, so I want to kind of catch all the rules in play in this one because, well, my rules introductions suck, frankly, but at least they give you a feel so that you're prepared to go into these. If you're watching still this, well, you're probably one of those people who seems to like my vids. Okay, so I guess the first thing is we're not at the deal strategy cards. I think that's where that's going to take place. I guess the first thing that takes place here is the replacement phase. Now, if we look at the scenario, yeah, pardon my mess, the Christians don't get any replacement points. That's that RR here. But the Muslims get them for the Seljuks and Aleppo and Damascus. And the Fatimids will also get them. But 3 for the Seljuks, 1 for Aleppo, 1 for Damascus. Now, the dead are one possibility, but another is guys on the map can be replaced. So that's probably more efficient for me at this point. So I'll take 2 points to up these Seljuks here. And I don't know if I've lost anything but them. I can't take any, if I recall correctly, in the Kingdom of Jerusalem or in Palestine. So I have to look over here, and I have 1 more Seljuk that I can move into the force pool there. Damascus, ooh, this is another Seljuk. Why don't I take a Cav? They're more valuable than infantry to me. Why don't I take as well the Damascans? I'm allowed to take 2 steps of them. For harassing weaker units are more valuable, but I'm just going to pump a whole unit into there. I've got a lot of units already in the force pool. I don't think that's a big deal. So that's my replacement phase. Now I'm going to go to the mustering. Now for mustering, first, leaders that were removed from the map get to come back. Now, this is something I may have wanted to think about, although I don't think it's a big deal, whether I wanted, say, Aleppo to be there. But otherwise, I don't have a lot of choices here to place leaders. I can't get my captured leaders back at this point. I get them back, I believe, in the strategy card phase, where I can pay a ransom, and then they end up in the force pool. I get them the next turn. That's an expense to pay for something you're not going to get to use right away. So that's kind of a bit painful. For mustering, take the units out of the force pool. And again, the Christians don't have any. And place them in spaces controlled by that player. Well, let's start looking first. The restrictions are no more than 4 in an off-map box, no more than 3 in the capital. I don't know what the power's capital is. I have to look that up. Home province is Mosul for the Seljuks, and of course Aleppo and Damascus. Okay. So I should be able to get most of my units on, and 2 in a walled city or provincial capital, 1 in a castle, and that's about it. So I should be able to get most everything on the board that I've played. Let's take a look at the Seljuks first of all. There aren't a lot of Seljuk territories that I can play in. That's one of the problems. This side is out of play. Aleppo's not in play, but I've got Edessa, which I believe can hold 2. I'll put a little Cav army there. I'm allowed a big 4 out in Mosul. They have a strategy rating of 1, I think, for Cav generals, if I recall, which means that I can move a pretty decent-sized Cav army out of Aleppo altogether, or out of Mosul altogether, which is kind of a valuable thing. And then I'll put my extra 1. Well, there aren't a lot of places to put them. I'll throw them up here. Remember, I can remove these guys during the winter phase, the returning home, whatever that is, demobilization. And now for Damascus, well, I'm allowed to drop 3 in the capital, and that sounds wise because that's going to keep my troops concentrated where I can use them more easily. And I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to fight with effective forces, essentially. Cav army can't be more than 4 units anyway, so, you know, this is about as big as I can get, if I'm not mistaken. I'll look all these things I set up and come back and tell you, I was completely wrong, obviously. All right. Now we're going to go to the strategy cards, and at this point, the Christians have to choose whether they want this card with its 3-point build play. Now, it's going to be used no matter what. So I don't honestly see why you wouldn't pick it up. Because the Muslims are going to pick it up if you don't. It's a 3-point card. So I'm just going to pick it up. I just don't see any advantage either way. I'll deal out the rest of the cards. I'll look up those things, and I'll tell you if I got something wrong. But otherwise, just assume I got things right. Dangerous assumption. Nah, I got that all wrong. It's the battle rating that's one for a Cav army. Which means I think I want to spread these out a little bit more. I don't want them all up here. The question, of course, is, do I want to pile together? These guys could move with a 2-action card. Basically, so what I can do is the vassal action, which allows me to play a card and move that many counters with 1 action. This is just further behind, so I don't see any advantage to this. So I'm going to set up like this and spread out as much as possible. Ooh, I could actually slip somebody back here, which might be of some value as well. Alright. So with the vassal action, I can move that many individual counters, leaders or troops. And if I end up moving cavalry together, or if I only move cavalry, I can move 1 more than the card would otherwise allow. Which is kind of an interesting thing, I guess. I don't know if that counts the leaders or whatever. Anyway, onward, and I dealt out the cards. Best leader, still same comparison, Toulouse versus Kerboiga, it looks like. So I guess we're on with the plan. Christians kick things off playing a siege card over on Tripoli. Now they get a free card for that because the card says draw a replacement, but they dropped the rating down to 2, went in and fought. They took 2 step losses, but took the city, so they get the points. Well, it's only a castle in this game. Cities are rare, so things like Tripoli don't count as cities, they're just strongholds. Anyway, that helps push things forward. It also reduces the it improves their ability to call for a city or territory to surrender, a castle to surrender. Alright, well, we'll see if the Seljuks can convert Antioch as easily. The Muslims felt the need to reinforce if the Crusaders are free from Tripoli, so they played this plan of attack card. Allows them to move 3 leaders. That's pretty potent. But even if they don't want to move leaders, they could use it for 3 times for every leader they forego using. 3 times 3 cav each. So given that their force was kind of spread out the way it was, they pretty much did that. They moved 1 leader out of Aleppo. But now Kerboiga has a huge army here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cav total, 14, 15, 16 strength points, plus the leader strength points, which adds another 3, so 19. That's about as big as we can manage here. Can we take on the Crusaders directly? Well, we're still smaller than them. They're at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 4 more, 19. They're still a bigger force, but if we harass them with the shadowing rolls, we might be able to do quite a bit of damage. And likewise, we might be able to convert some of these territories. Most importantly, really, is Antioch. The rest of this, I kind of can slip by and bypass. The Crusaders needed to go through something and capture it, because otherwise it's painful to move through the cities. Okay, onward. For the Crusaders, they played, not that card. Shit. Maybe I forgot to play a card. Well, they gotta play a big card. They're gonna play this one. They get to move 2 units, though. Yeah, they don't want to do that. They've got good cards otherwise. Yeah, they'll do it. Alright, so half their unit... I thought I had a 2-point card played. Half their units, well, the main force has marched down. Baalbek fell without a fight, just walking through. But now they've laid siege to Acre. Now, what's important about this is because they're in Jerusalem now, the Fatimid role doesn't happen anymore. The Fatimids will not get involved. And that's one of the key points of the Crusaders holding the card, is they can prevent that intervention. Of course, we still got a problem up here. Now, how good? 6, 9, 12, 18. My point is that Godfrey is pretty potent. I think I'm going to pull him into play to try to challenge things here. Since I get 2 leaders movements with this, I'm going to be able to do that. Well, the Muslims thought they were in a pretty good position because they had one heck of a little card here. Construct siege tower, which reduced the defender's resistance factor by 3. The resistance factor was 3. That would get rid of all the shifts. They were almost guaranteed a victory there, but the defender gets to play a response whenever the attacker plays a card. They played a sortie, which they weren't planning on playing. They were hoping that Bouillon would be able to drive the attacker away, but the chances seemed that they would fall if that was if they waited. So they played this and ended up getting 2 hits, which gives resistance factors, essentially. The positive side was they got resistance factors. The negative is they lose their steps, which isn't too terrible, but it does weaken their chances of holding them. I think the Muslims are still going to attack here at Antioch because they want to take the city before Godfrey comes down. So we'll chance that attack out. One quick thing I wanted to note: the attackers could have played another attack card, siege attack card. They don't have to hold off. But I looked through their hand and they had nothing that'll help them reduce the factor and make their siege more likely. But they want to take it at these odds rather than risk Godfrey. And Antioch fell. Not a lot of losses there. Some 2-step losses for the Muslims. It's not that hard to take a city with a minimal garrison in it that only had 1 unit, 2 steps. You just have to wipe the garrison out, and that was easy enough done, even though they were rolling on only pretty much the same table as the defender. The defender was rolling on the 3 to 6, they were rolling on the 7 to 10, but they had the leader advantage, so that gave them a +1. As long as they got a 3 or better, they'd get to the range where they did 2 hits. So that's good enough for them. And that puts it on the Crusaders. And now they're in kind of this tricky position because their victory points are back down to 5. Certainly, they can get enough by getting Acre and Jerusalem. They don't need to hold Antioch. But, I don't know, it's kind of tough to just watch it fall again. So here I run into an interesting position. The epidemic card says play on an opponent's besieging force. Now it has a B, which means either player can play it. Fine. And then it goes on to talk about it, and it very clearly affects just the besieging player, the attacker. On the other hand, over here in the rules, it says if the epidemic card is drawn, if it's drawn randomly as the Fortunes of War, it affects one player or the other randomly. My feeling is that this card was intended to be playable by either player on the other, so that the Crusaders could play it against the guys inside. Now, it could still spread outside and affect them, and it might not be a wise choice for them to play, but as it stands, they can't even play it with any value. I mean, it wrecks their own army and then maybe hits the besieged force. That doesn't seem to mesh with what's expected in the rules. Maybe there are other epidemic cards that work differently, but my guess is the cards are just poorly worded, well, misworded. Kerboiga had a nice card play, this Messenger Intercepted. It's a 3-point activation card. Well, but the event says activate any army. He decided to activate Kerboiga, but it also can force either, it allows you to look at the opponent's hand, or what I think is more valuable, pull a card from it at random and kill it. In this case, it pulled a 2-point card that could have been useful. otherwise. Kerboiga's down in Damascus now. Now, he can actually enter Jerusalem now because the Crusaders have entered there. The Crusaders took the Fatimid out of play. 50-50 chance that would be a good event, but they thought that was for the best for them. Kerboiga has left Ridwan back here at Antioch. Now, Ridwan could be sieged, but here's the problem. It's hard to maintain 2 sieges at once because your siege cards are one pile, you know. So, in general, in this game, it looks like you want to have one land army that's moving about and doing, you know, engaging the enemy if possible, and another one sieging, if you can mix them. If you can't, you can use one army to do both, really. There's no problem with that. But it's difficult to split up and use your forces effectively that way without some of those special cards that allow you to move multiple units, multiple stacks at once. One quick brief note, the Muslims had bypassed Baalbek. They attempted to get up. They made a call for it to surrender and failed. They had to pay attrition for that and for crossing the mountains. I think is how it worked. I don't think they could have made it. I think they had to go this way because they wanted to get to Damascus. They just thought they'd take Baalbek. Anyway, I took an attrition roll, which I probably shouldn't have. I think it hurt some units. Let me bring those back because they shouldn't have been able to do what they did. They moved too far. Okay, so Godfrey then marched through here, had a quick victory over the force, major victory for whatever that matters, and then marched into Aleppo. Had a 50-50 chance of it just falling to him. It didn't happen. He's got a siege. He managed to make the blockade die roll on this one, which I don't know how much of a value that is because the starvation's kind of weak in terms of what it does, but at the very least it allows certain events. What he's doing here, you might say, well, victory's down here. It really is. You got 10 victory points, and once you have Jerusalem, you know, you've got 2 more up here and 1 more here. That's enough for victory. It's going to be really hard to deny the Christians victory. If you move your army north, well, then things like Tripoli are in play, and they can probably hold them. All fine and true, but here's the point. This card, the Fatimid Diplomacy, could not be used to help my siege, except to discard it, perhaps, to draw a card, which might have been nice. But the advantage to, if I had been able to wipe Aleppo out easily, is those are troops that come in. There's a couple replacement points each turn for the Muslims in Aleppo. So I can reduce the size of their harassing army by taking out all the strongholds in Aleppo. And likewise, if I could do the same in Damascus, I could take that power out of play. I don't know if the game's long enough to really be playing that way. I probably should have discarded the card. It's hard to tell if you can with a mandatory event card. I think you can, as long as the mandatory event's not in play. And it's not now. Anyway, that's how I would have played it, but this came to mind, and it seemed like a good idea to try to knock Aleppo out if I could make things fall quickly, but I don't think I can, and I think I'm going to have to face them. One thing of note the Aleppo thing brought to mind, Godfrey of Bouillon, Christianity's most perfect knight and this, that, and the other of the time, is not very impressive in this game. He's not well rated compared to what I would expect given his name. First of all, he's kind of slow. His combat ability is significantly less than Toulouse's. I'm not going to dispute these things. I just think there's an interesting viewpoint there that Godfrey is not that impressive compared to some of the other leaders. What else do we have? We have Raymond, or Bohemond. Bohemond's clearly very good. I don't mind him being as good as the top raider. And Baldwin is not terribly impressive. Tancred, probably not too impressive. But you do kind of wonder why they shortchanged Godfrey so much, because he was kind of impressive at times, although slower than some. And Kerboiga's come into play, attacking Acre. He's trying to relieve the siege. He has a combat card, Qadis, motivate troops, add 2 to your battle die roll if you have at least 2 Muslim units. Well, they do. We'll resolve this and come back in a moment. This is a big one. Well, the Catholics outrolled the Seljuks and actually managed to get a major victory here, which meant there was a pursuit, a second round of combat that they get to roll on here, very much like Empires in Arms, or EU if you're following that. Kerboga is pushed back to Banyas, weakened tremendously. His army is much, much less capable of handling things. But the Crusader army is also, it's all depleted, which, you know, they're not in good shape here. They've still got a decent amount of units, but not enough to force a surrender easily now. They're below that 6.6 unit limit where they can like walk into a castle and expect it to give in, which makes things a lot harder for them. One of the bonuses, not in this card, but the Muslims have been able to play cards that have gotten them draws back. That's kind of a nice effect, you know, for the siege. They played a siege defensive card that increased the problem in Acre, etc. So things are becoming kind of difficult for the Crusaders here. It's hard to tell if they're going to be able to pull this off, even though they made that quick stab into Jerusalem. Next turn, there's going to be a lot more Muslim units back. Kerboga had the advantage still of being able to play some of these defensive or offensive siege cards. He went up to Tripoli and sieged that. He's managed to take it back, giving the Crusaders down to 3 victory points, and on top of that, increasing Acre up to a 6 resistance factor. So, you know, it's kind of nice. Some of these cards, they allow you to throw them away and draw again. And that's kind of a random factor in the game. Some people aren't going to like that, I think, because they're used to their cards being the limit to what they can play. The Crusaders had all these blank turns. They could have done something, but it's not much. They could move 1 unit around. They can't draw their sieges. They can't do anything else. So they're kind of at the mercy of the Muslims while they're getting these cards. I think some people would really, really dislike that. Anyway, it looks like we're done with the turn, except for demobilization. I've got to take care of that. I had a winter campaigning card, but I ended up using it, so the Muslims are not going to be able to avoid demobilization in that way. I'll go through that, and I think I'll just load this up because there's not a lot to show in demobilization.